Hello and welcome to the Metaverse Insiders interview series. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Josh Hatton, and today's episode we present part 2 of our interview with Roberto Grande, the CEO and founder of 3Gen. So, concerning the metaverse in itself, this is a highly discussed concept once again. People aren't really sure what it is, and people don't necessarily differentiate the metaverse from Web3. However, I personally do believe them to be two very different concepts. So, regarding the metaverse and the so-called multiverse, in many people's opinions, what are your perspectives on this?
Well, right. Always good to define terms. If we, at its most basic level, if a metaverse is just a virtual environment in which people are immersed and spend time, well, we've had those for a long time now. I would argue that the first version of Call of Duty gave me that experience, but even the Robloxes and Minecraft have afford that at scale today. If we are talking about the metaverse as you sort of alluded to in lockstep with Web3, that is the construct of a virtual environment with digital assets and potentially property that are owned by individuals or users rather than the platform. And in many instances, maybe even powered by some sort of native token to sort of facilitate what each of these projects will become, which are these micronations and microeconomies that incentivize behavior. What's my perspective on it? Look, there are two different versions of the metaverse. I actually think that AR will probably be the primary driver of mass adoption. I believe that the technology, as we start to see the next wave of wearables coming through, whereby we can augment our experience or almost like gamify it in a sort of mixed reality, will be the sort of primary driver. When we start to think about virtual reality metaverses, and again, it is a multiverse. I hope that it will become a large spread of different blockchain-enabled experiences, and that we don't all get aggregated into one person's version of it, which again would defeat the entire purpose of Web3 and its promise to democratize the internet. So anyway, the metaverse, I am, like I said, I'm bullish on the AR version of it. I am still waiting for the VR version of it to become something that is ubiquitous from both a hardware availability perspective. We have had the promise of the headsets becoming lighter and cheaper as we're able to move a lot of the compute into the cloud, but that still hasn't been realized. So until we can get this sort of broad footprint of usage, and the other thing we need to solve, VR will take a minute. The other thing we need to solve for is, and I don't know about you, Josh, but after about 15 minutes in the headset, my legs start to go wobbly. So I'm not sure whether it's a technology problem or a human problem that needs to be solved, and the answer is maybe both. So virtual environments, love it, supported by token economies to incentivize and reward and give people the ascribe true value to digital asset ownership. Theoretically, I love. How it will manifest, we'll have to wait to see. And the broadest ecosystem of the metaverse, as we tie it back to Web3, is I don't think the metaverse is one particular manifestation of an experience. I love the sort of blockchain gaming world. I love what we're seeing in some of the move to earn space, where you're augmenting physical environments with this sort of game, also FitFi incentives. Then there's the sandboxes and the uplands and the high streets of the world, which give me yet another flavor of experience. So I'm looking at the metaverse underpinned by the eventual Web3 as the full suite of those experiences, and I hope that they never converge, and we move towards interoperability, composability, and obviously maintain openness along the way.
Right. So, as you mentioned, openness along the way. In its own right, blockchain technology is technically decentralized, How do you believe this to be incorporated into the evolution of technology? Because once again, it's a controversial point of conversation. People aren't really sure if true decentralization is really possible. What do you think about this, Roberto?
Look, I want to remind everybody that that's how the internet started. This decentralized structure of the internet is being heralded as a scary potentiality by some, but Web 1 was a decentralized architecture. It was only when we moved from the read to read write that the quantum of data that was being pushed onto the network became so great that we started to create these platformed silos that eventually grown into the walled gardens that now own our identity. So can we have a decentralized internet? Sure, we've already had one. Will the path there be frictionless? No. But is it worth the grind? Absolutely. Remember, it is this decentralized structure that will give us, well, we already have the early promise of it in digital asset ownership. The moment and the DApp layer that comes with it, but decentralization brings with it data sovereignty for consumers. Let's think about George Washington, I think, is there is no, I'm going to butcher it, but basically there is no true freedom without property rights. One goes with the other. And so when I talk about the Web3 or data sovereignty representing a democratization of the internet, what it really comes with is the emancipation of the consumer, and it affords or promises the reclamation of control of our identity, and potentially restoring to consumers the opportunity to participate in the value exchange that they currently contribute to the consumer behavioral supply chain or consumer behavioral data supply chain. So look, the question was, can we get there? Yes. Will it be hard? Also, yes. Is it worth it? Yes.
I tell you what, Roberto, there's a real strong trend amongst all topics within this scene, isn't there? It's a very nice take. I haven't heard it from that perspective before. So you recently spoke at a panel at the CMO Summit, didn't you? I believe it was the Forbes one. Can you provide us with a brief overview of what you were discussing and how your overall experience was, please?
Oh, look, the experience is phenomenal. Seth Maitland, who runs that practice, curated a really sort of special event, as well as just sort of the level of conversations that we're able to have in this sort of small setting. One of the interesting things that sort of came up there, and I may have already spoken about it earlier, was again, how should brands be thinking about the space? And that was an instance where I sort of said, look, given the current climate, let's pause on the metaverse and PFP drops and instead go back to the tech. And one of the other things, again, coming back to the utility of the technology to drive closer relationships with customers, and also start to expand their sort of view of the likes, dislikes, preferences, etc. We started to sort of move out several increments of what happens when wallet adoption becomes broader, and what does it look like? What happens to CRM when we can augment it with WRM, right? Wallet relationship management, as you can again, once it's on chain, the transparency is there. So similarly, how can we start to build a persona around one of our customers based on their other likes or behaviors? So wallet relationship management, or a future of wallet relationship management, as a way to augment some of the traditional CRM practices, was also sort of touched on.
That's some really interesting stuff. I wish I was there to have experienced it firsthand. So, Roberto, I have a couple more questions for you. Within the next few years, what can we expect from 3Gen, and is there anything exciting on its way?
It's all exciting. We've started to do a lot more in Asia right now, so spending a lot of time in Tokyo and Singapore, as we're starting to see those markets sort of, especially Japan is looking to position itself as not only the new home of the startup economy, but also a leader in Web3. So we've sort of expanded our footprint a little, which has led to a lot of time on aeroplanes. As you know, it took a minute to schedule this. And it's interesting. So we are exploring use cases that are across large physical footprints. I sort of, let's leave it at that, and events with a lot of physical and digital mirrors, in terms of we're taking these large activations, building these net new location-based layers over the top of them that in and of themselves are sort of triggering these NFT incentivized or enabled experiences, but then also tying those back or mirroring those experiences in virtual worlds, and both expanding the exposure of these events to a global audience, but also allowing people at the event to carry those moments beyond the life cycle or footprint of the events themselves. We're also starting to see quite a lot of projects in the physical asset world. So, a lot of the interest in sort of the ethereal tokens has sort of pulled back as the sort of crypto winter and NFT market set in. But there are a lot of projects now looking to leverage the technology to take physical items and effectively tokenize those, be it through fractionalized ownership or otherwise, and create these asset-backed assets that you can then build a community around build utility around, build all sorts of experiences that, again, span digital and physical. But again, in this instance, starting from a point of truth in the form of a physical asset that upon which the underlying value of the digital asset is based. And so where are we going to be going 3 years? I have no idea. I didn't know I was going to be here 3 years ago. So whatever I tell you will be positively wrong.
Thank you, Roberto. Well, I think that covers everything. I had a really interesting conversation. I hope to have many more. Well, that's a roundup for part 2 of our conversation with the CEO and founder of 3Gen, Roberto Grande. Thank you for listening, and see you next time.